Amanda Carter had everything: a successful career, a devoted fiancé, and a best friend she trusted like a sister. But when her lifeless body was discovered in a remote forest, the shocking truth came to light. Bryan Fields, the fiancé she adored, and Megan, the friend she confided in, had conspired to end her life in a betrayal so twisted it would leave an entire community reeling. Amanda Carter appeared to have it all. At 32, she was thriving in every sense of the word. Her career as a financial analyst was not only lucrative, but also deeply fulfilling, earning her respect from colleagues and clients alike. Amanda's personal life was equally idyllic. She was engaged to Bryan Fields, a charming and seemingly devoted man who had proposed to her in a picture-perfect moment on a sunny beach just a year earlier. She lived in a beautiful suburban neighborhood, surrounded by manicured lawns and friendly neighbors who waved cheerfully as she passed by. Amanda's social circle was equally enviable. Her best friend, Megan, had been a part of her life since high school. Megan was the first person Amanda called with good news and the one who offered a shoulder to cry on during difficult times. Their friendship was the kind that others admired, built on years of shared experiences, secrets, and unwavering loyalty. Amanda often joked that Megan knew her better than anyone, even Bryan. But behind the polished surface of her life, strange things began to happen. It started with small inconveniences that Amanda brushed off as forgetfulness. A favorite bracelet disappeared from her jewelry box, only to reappear days later in an entirely different place. Important documents from work went missing, then were found tucked away in drawers where Amanda swore she hadn't placed them. At first, she blamed herself, chalking it up to stress from a demanding project at work. Then, the unsettling messages began. At first, they were vague and cryptic. Notes slipped under her door or left on her car windshield bore phrases like, "You can't trust everyone," and "You're being watched." Amanda tried to dismiss them as harmless pranks, perhaps the work of mischievous teenagers in the neighborhood. But as the weeks went by, the messages grew darker and more personal. They referenced details of her daily life, where she went for coffee, the time she left for her evening runs, even the color of her bedroom curtains. It was clear someone was watching her. Concerned, but not wanting to appear paranoid, Amanda confided in Megan. Megan was sympathetic, offering reassurances and practical advice. She urged Amanda to install a home security system and report the incidents to the police. Amanda hesitated. She hated the thought of overreacting and disrupting her life for what might amount to nothing more than a series of coincidences. But deep down, she felt an unease she couldn't shake, as if an invisible shadow had settled over her once bright world. Her fiancé Bryan seemed supportive, but largely dismissive of Amanda's concerns. He reassured her that she was likely imagining connections where none existed, attributing the strange occurrences to stress. His nonchalant attitude frustrated Amanda, but she didn't press the issue. She told herself he was just trying to keep her calm. As the weeks turned into months, Amanda began to feel the weight of her unease pressing down on her. Her once effortless routines now felt fraught with tension. She found herself double-checking the locks on her doors and windows and scanning the faces of strangers in coffee shops for signs of familiarity. She was living in a state of constant vigilance, though she couldn't pinpoint the source of her fear. What Amanda didn't know was that the unsettling incidents were not random. They were part of a calculated plan, and the people orchestrating them were far closer than she could have ever imagined. Megan had always been a central figure in Amanda's life, a constant presence through highs and lows. Amanda trusted her implicitly, often referring to her as the sister she never had. Megan had always been there to celebrate Amanda's achievements and console her during heartbreaks, but beneath the surface of their friendship lay a quiet bitterness. Megan harbored a deep envy of Amanda's success. While Amanda climbed the corporate ladder, Megan remained stuck in a string of unfulfilling jobs. While Amanda found love with Bryan, Megan's own relationships crumbled. The jealousy that simmered inside Megan had long been hidden, but it began to manifest in unexpected ways. Bryan, Amanda's fiancé, had his own dark secrets. On the outside, he was charming, attentive, and seemed like the perfect partner. But behind the polished facade, Bryan was drowning in financial trouble. His expensive tastes and reckless spending had led him into a web of debt that he struggled to escape. When Megan and Bryan crossed paths at one of Amanda's social gatherings, their mutual discontent found an outlet. What started as innocent small talk quickly escalated into something far more sinister. Megan and Bryan bonded over their shared frustrations, Megan's envy of Amanda's perfect life, and Bryan's desperation to maintain his lifestyle. They began meeting in secret, their connection growing deeper with each encounter. Their relationship was built not on love, but on mutual exploitation. Megan craved Bryan's attention and the thrill of having something Amanda didn't, while Bryan saw in Megan a willing accomplice to his growing resentment toward Amanda. It wasn't long before their conversations took a darker turn. Bryan confided in Megan about his financial woes, hinting at his growing frustration with Amanda's refusal to merge their finances before the wedding. Megan, emboldened by her jealousy, suggested they could find a way to fix their problems together. The idea of getting rid of Amanda wasn't presented as a serious plan at first. It was mentioned in jest, a fleeting remark made during one of their clandestine meetings. But the seed had been planted, and as time passed, it began to grow. The threatening messages Amanda received were part of their escalating plan. Megan and Bryan worked together to craft an atmosphere of fear, carefully timing each note and ensuring they went unnoticed by anyone else. Their goal was to make Amanda feel isolated and vulnerable, to destabilize her emotionally. Megan, in particular, took a twisted pleasure in watching Amanda unravel. She played the role of the concerned best friend flawlessly, offering comfort and advice while secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes. Bryan, meanwhile, began preparing for the next phase of their plan. He started researching ways to access Amanda's accounts and forge her signature. He was methodical, careful not to leave a trail that could lead back to him. Together, Megan and Bryan created a facade of normalcy, continuing to interact with Amanda as if nothing was amiss. But every act of kindness, every gesture of support was a calculated move in their game. As their plan took shape, Amanda remained oblivious to the true nature of the people closest to her. She continued to confide in Megan, unaware that her best friend was betraying her at every turn. Bryan, too, maintained his role as the doting fiancé, hiding his contempt behind a mask of affection. What neither of them anticipated, however, was how their actions would spiral out of control. Their plan, though carefully constructed, was built on lies and deceit, and it was only a matter of time before cracks began to appear. Amanda's disappearance sent shockwaves through her close-knit community. She had always been punctual and reliable, so when she failed to show up for an important presentation at work, her colleagues grew alarmed. After multiple unanswered phone calls and texts, one of them decided to drive to her house. The sight of Amanda's car in the driveway with no sign of her inside prompted an immediate call to the police. When officers arrived at Amanda's home, they were greeted by a chilling scene. The front door was slightly ajar, though there were no signs of forced entry. Inside, the house seemed oddly untouched at first glance. Her purse, keys, and phone were all neatly placed on the kitchen counter, as if Amanda had simply stepped out for a moment. But as officers looked closer, subtle signs of a struggle emerged. A chair was overturned in the dining room, and a picture frame lay shattered on the floor. In the bedroom, the neatly made bed had a single deep crease, as though someone had grabbed hold of it in haste. Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator with years of experience, was called in to lead the case. His first impression was that this wasn't a random act. There was no evidence of a break-in, which suggested that Amanda likely knew whoever had been in her home. As he interviewed neighbors, friends, and colleagues, a troubling pattern began to emerge. Several people mentioned that Amanda had been acting unusually anxious in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Some recalled her talking about strange messages and a growing feeling that she was being watched. Bryan was the first person Detective Harris questioned. The fiancé's demeanor was calm, though perhaps a bit too much so. He explained that Amanda had been under a lot of stress lately and speculated that she might have left voluntarily to clear her head. When pressed about their relationship, Bryan admitted that they had been arguing more often, but insisted it was nothing serious. Harris noted Bryan's composed but detached tone and filed it away as odd. Megan, on the other hand, appeared visibly shaken during her interview. She described Amanda as her closest friend and painted a picture of a woman overwhelmed by work and personal stress. Megan's emotions seemed genuine, but Harris couldn't shake the feeling that something about her story didn't quite add up. She avoided eye contact during certain questions and stumbled over details about when she last saw Amanda. As days turned into weeks, the search for Amanda intensified. Volunteers combed nearby parks and wooded areas, while police canvassed every lead, but each avenue seemed to hit a dead end. Then, nearly a month after Amanda's disappearance, a group of hikers stumbled upon a grisly scene deep in the woods. Hidden beneath a thin layer of leaves and branches lay Amanda's body. The autopsy revealed the cause of death to be strangulation, with bruises on her wrists indicating she had been restrained. There were also defensive wounds on her hands, a testament to her desperate fight for survival. Forensic evidence collected from the site hinted at multiple perpetrators, though it would take time to confirm. The discovery of Amanda's body turned the case from a missing person investigation into a homicide. The once vibrant woman who had been the center of her community was now the victim of a brutal and calculated crime. As Detective Harris examined the evidence, he became increasingly convinced that the answers lay within Amanda's inner circle. The key to solving her murder, he believed, was hidden among those who had claimed to love her most. The discovery of Amanda's body transformed the investigation overnight. What had started as a frantic search for a missing woman was now a homicide case, and the urgency to find her killer intensified. Detective Harris, already suspicious of Amanda's closest connections, focused his attention on Bryan and Megan. Their behavior in the days following the discovery raised more questions than answers. Bryan appeared distraught in public, but was curiously absent from several key moments in the investigation. Megan, on the other hand, oscillated between exaggerated grief and uneasy evasiveness. As forensic teams analyzed evidence from the crime scene, the first major breakthrough emerged. A piece of duct tape found near Amanda's body contained Bryan's fingerprints. This discovery shattered his claims of innocence. Bryan had previously stated he had no idea where Amanda had gone after leaving the house, yet his prints at the site told a different story. When confronted, Bryan stumbled through a series of inconsistent explanations, each more implausible than the last. Megan's involvement became evident shortly after. DNA collected from the scene included a partial match to Megan, further implicating her in the crime. Phone records also revealed a disturbing pattern. In the weeks leading up to Amanda's disappearance, Megan and Bryan had exchanged hundreds of messages, many of them in the middle of the night. When investigators obtained access to these texts, the extent of their betrayal became horrifyingly clear. The messages detailed their growing frustration with Amanda and their plans to deal with her. Though vague in wording, the intent was unmistakable. As detectives pieced together the timeline, they uncovered more damning evidence. Bank records showed Bryan had forged Amanda's signature to transfer significant sums of money into his account just days before her disappearance. He had also made multiple searches online about insurance payouts in the event of an accidental death. Megan's computer revealed equally incriminating searches about staging disappearances and avoiding detection. These findings painted a chilling picture of premeditated murder, motivated by greed and jealousy. With the evidence mounting, both Bryan and Megan were arrested and charged with Amanda's murder. Bryan's demeanor shifted drastically. Gone was the composed, grieving fiancé. In its place was a man scrambling to save himself. He pointed the finger squarely at Megan, claiming she had manipulated him into going along with her plan. He described her as a jealous and unhinged friend who had harbored resentment toward Amanda for years. Megan's response was equally self-serving. She claimed Bryan was the mastermind, painting him as a controlling and abusive partner who had used her as a pawn in his scheme. She insisted she had only helped out of fear for her safety, though the evidence told a different story. Investigators found no signs of coercion. Instead, they uncovered a toxic alliance fueled by mutual resentment and greed. The public was captivated by the revelations. Amanda's story, once one of success and promise, had become a cautionary tale of betrayal and deceit. As the case headed to trial, the chilling details of how two people Amanda trusted most conspired to end her life shocked even the most hardened detectives. It was clear that the crime had been meticulously planned, but the cracks in their partnership and their underestimation of forensic technology had led to their undoing. For Detective Harris, the case was far from over. His mission now was to ensure justice for Amanda, whose life had been cruelly taken by those she loved and trusted. The trial of Bryan Fields and Megan became a media sensation, capturing the nation's attention with its shocking details of betrayal and greed. The courtroom was packed daily with journalists, spectators, and Amanda's grieving family, all seeking answers and justice. Prosecutors meticulously laid out the evidence, painting a picture of cold-blooded planning by two individuals who Amanda had trusted with her life. The betrayal struck a chord with the public, transforming the case into a grim symbol of how deceit can fester in even the closest relationships. The prosecution's case was damning. They began with the forensic evidence, presenting Bryan's fingerprints on the duct tape found near Amanda's body and Megan's partial DNA match to samples collected from the scene. A trail of bank transactions was revealed, showing Bryan's repeated attempts to siphon money from Amanda's accounts. The forged documents proved his desperation to escape his financial troubles, and his internet search history left no doubt about his premeditated intent. Screenshots of text messages between Bryan and Megan provided the final, irrefutable connection, showcasing their collusion in chilling detail. In one exchange, Bryan lamented how Amanda's refusal to combine their finances was holding him back, while Megan encouraged him to take action. Another series of messages hinted at plans to stage Amanda's disappearance, though neither had anticipated the scrutiny their actions would attract. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin for the two defendants, leaving little room for doubt about their culpability. Bryan's defense relied on shifting the blame entirely onto Megan. His attorneys portrayed him as a weak man, manipulated by a cunning and jealous woman. Bryan claimed he had initially believed Megan's suggestions were just fantasies born of frustration, only to find himself dragged into her plot when things escalated. He attempted to portray himself as a reluctant participant, someone who had been coerced into the crime out of fear. Megan's defense followed a similar strategy, with her attorneys arguing that she had been under Bryan's control. They described him as the mastermind, using her insecurities and emotions to exploit her. Megan's tearful testimony aimed to elicit sympathy, but the evidence undermined her claims. Her internet searches and the proactive role she had taken in isolating Amanda and creating fear left no doubt about her willingness to participate in the crime. The jury deliberated for only a few days, their decision a reflection of the overwhelming evidence. Bryan and Megan were found guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The sentencing phase was equally dramatic. Bryan received the death penalty, a rare but justified outcome given the calculated nature of the crime and the betrayal of trust it involved. Megan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, her role in the plot deemed equally heinous, but mitigated by her lack of prior offenses. For Amanda's family, the verdicts brought a measure of closure, but no solace for their loss. Amanda had been a beacon of kindness and ambition, and the void left by her death was immeasurable. The community that once celebrated her success now mourned her senseless death, vowing to keep her memory alive. The case left an indelible mark on all who followed it. It became a grim reminder of how greed and envy can corrupt even the most trusted relationships. For Detective Harris, the resolution of the case was bittersweet. Justice had been served, but it could never bring Amanda back. As the courtroom emptied and the nation moved on to its next headline, Amanda's story lingered, a tragic testament to the devastating consequences of betrayal.